We're going to be at the utilities conference. We'll learn about utilities today, I should say. I'm sorry. So hopefully everyone's in the right room. Make sure you've signed up. EDHs will be given at the end. Just as a reminder, NC State says everyone needs to wear a mask unless you're speaking at the podium here or drinking or eating. First up, we're going to have Byron. We're going to talk to you today. And just remember, they saved the best for last. So I think we're all going to be entertained.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Y'all have to wake up now. Look, I'm very excited to be here to talk to y'all about utilities. I know that this is a very important topic, and I feel super important because I stand between you and going home. So if you want to get out of here, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Now we go. I'm Byron Sanders. I am the State Utilities Manager. I can talk, so I will be referring to my script so as to get you out of here in a timely manner. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all today. We all recognize the importance of utility relocation to project delivery. We also all recognize that utility relocation and accommodation presents some complex challenges. So to address some of these challenges, the Utilities Unit has been busy working not only to identify and resolve our most persistent issues, but to also bring consistency to utilities practices across the department through increased education and knowledge sharing. Ultimately, the aim is to improve the department's utilities program and our overall project delivery. So today I'm joined by the State Encroachments Engineer, Mr. Larry Sanders, and our regional utilities managers, Amy York, Michael Wright, and Bo Hemphill. Together, we'll be sharing a few of the efforts that the Utilities Unit has been working with. So today, I'll be highlighting the recently updated Utilities Accommodations Manual. Michael will discuss recent enhancements we've made to the Utility Agreement Management System, or UAMS. Amy will speak to the efforts of the Utilities Branch of Integrated Project Delivery. Bo will identify a few utility items that are important for project delivery personnel to consider. And Larry will update us on the latest developments in the world of encroachments. Any additional time will be devoted to your questions. One of our proudest achievements over the last year is the publishing of the revised Utilities Accommodations Manual last March. The new Utilities Accommodations Manual, or UAM for short, is one manual that combines, updates, and replaces two previous guidance documents. The first is the Policies and Procedures for Accommodating Utilities on Highway Rights-of-Way. This document is sometimes referred to as the Accommodations Manual or the Encroachment Manual. This is a fairly dated document, last formally updated in 1993. The other document the UAM replaces is the Utility Policy Manual, a high-level document that was published by the Utilities Unit in 2014. The new UAM provides policies, specifications, and best practices all in one document. To develop this manual, input was obtained from DOT division personnel, district office staff, and other technical disciplines. The consulting firm that assisted us with the manual brought a lot of experience from the utilities industry and best practices from other state DOTs. It should be noted that in addition to utility installations, the UAM also includes information related to non-utility encroachment agreements and has a construction and maintenance section that provides post-approval guidance for performing work within DOT right-of-way. While the document is certainly printable, it is at its best and most useful as a PDF. The table of contents has live links that take you to a topic and a click, and it can be searched for key words and phrases. The body of the document contains internal links, when one section refers to content in another, and external links to outside documents. In an effort to make this UAM as comprehensive as possible, we've included several appendices, including a glossary of terms, a collection of utility-related memos, and all of our encroachment agreements. The new UAM updates several utility specifications. Material specs, minimum vary depths, and clear zone requirements are all discussed in depth. To clarify, these specifications in the UAM apply to utility installations by others in DOT right-of-way. The DOT standard spec book covers many of the same items for utilities that are being installed as part of the highway contract. The UAM also adds content that was previously missing from our policy guidance. So the UAM now includes guidance for small cell installations, which is all the rage. A comprehensive discussion on trenchless installations and their requirements, and an entire section dedicated to utility coordination, discussing topics like betterment, conflict identification, and determination of relocation cost responsibility. It's also worth mentioning that the UAM still contains a lot of the accommodations guidance and state and federal supporting statutes that the previous guidance documents contain. It's just that now everything is much easier to find. The next update of the UAM is scheduled for the first quarter of this year. It will mostly consist of minor updates, but it will include two significant additions, and those are an updated interpretation of GS 136-27.1 and guidance regarding the recent FHWA broadband rule that was published by the feds in December. GS 136-27.1 is the general statute that requires NCDOT to financially participate in the relocation of public water and sewer facilities. The general statute requires us to participate based on a tiered system some of you may be familiar with. Municipalities that are under 10,000, we pay 100%. If you're over 100,000, we pay 0% of those relocation costs. And if you're in the middle, then it's tiered based on your population. The general statute does not define what an improvement project is. It basically says that we are responsible for relocation costs on transportation improvement projects, little letters, so not TIPs. So the language that we are including in this latest revision of the UAM helps to better define what an improvement is, and therefore which activities the statute will be applied to versus activities that we consider to be maintenance and therefore not subject to the statute. Last month, FHWA published new rules aimed at promoting and accommodating broadband installations within state rights-of-way. This new rule requires state DOTs to identify a broadband coordinator, establish a registration process for broadband providers who want to be included in notifications and initiatives, develop a process for notifying those registered entities annually of the STIP and other developments, and to coordinate initiatives with other statewide telecommunication and broadband plans, including strategies to minimize repeated excavations that involve broadband infrastructure installations in the right-of-way. While this rule goes into effect in March, NCDOT has already laid the groundwork for compliance. Last year, in collaboration with NCDIT, the Department of Information Technology, we established the Dig Once policy, aimed to reduce repeated excavations for telecom installations. And as part of that initiative, we established a process for broadband providers to sign up or register to be a part of that initiative. While this broadband rule content will be new to the UAM, it is a topic that will certainly continue to grow as the broadband initiatives at the state and federal level continue to gain steam. So now, from the UAM to UAMS, I'm going to hand it off to Mr. Michael Bright, and he will share the latest enhancements to our utility agreement management system, UAMS.
Thank you, Byron. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Michael Bright. I'm the Western Region Utilities Manager. I'm going to be talking to you about the new upgrades to UAMS that we have implemented this year while working with the EDS team. First of all, what is UAMS? UAMS stands for the Utility Agreement Management System. This tool is used for setting up utility agreements with hundreds of utility owners, municipalities throughout the state. The UAMS system helps us to set up our objectives and the utility relocation work to be done in our commitments paid up for that work. This tool is not only set up to create a utility agreement, but to create the claims, keep up with the workflow tasks and status, create change requests, and provide reports that can be used for our project managers. After all work has been completed, it is also used to close the agreement after the final payments have been made. So now I will talk about some of the upgrades and new fields that we have made to UAMS this past year and some things that we will be working on in 2022. Why do we need more fields? The purpose of UAMS is not only to create utility agreements, but to also provide more information, to provide better tracking of our spending, information about supplements that are anticipated, which will help us with the projections and expenditures that may be coming up our way. It also helps us keep up with the status of those utility relocations with information that is provided to our partners in the division offices. We are better able to keep up with the activities of utility owners and keep up to date with relocation expectations. It will also help us keep up with the status of the work and cost information, which means fewer random requests from project managers. Let's look at some of these new features in UAMS. Projected start date. This is an estimated date that we can verify and change to actual date at a later time. The intent is to capture the date in which relocation activities are expected to begin. One potential use is when combined with months to completion, an anticipated completion date is created. This date, combined with a few assumptions, could be used to automate expenditure projections. Project start date. Project start date can be added to the pre-agreement prior to confirming the actual start date. And it should be updated to reflect the actual start date once it is confirmed. We recognize that the title of some of these fields may be confusing. We will be looking at changing these titles at a later time to eliminate some of the confusion. The number of months to complete. This field's intention is estimating the number of months needed for a utility owner to complete the relocation. This should be updated as more accurate relocation information is provided. This also sets a schedule for projections that reports to project managers to use. Relocation status. This information should be provided directly from the utility owners as to when the actual boots on the ground work has begun. This field is also helpful in providing utility-specific status information to project managers and to the project team. Supplemental anticipated. It is important that utility owners and utility coordinators communicate early and often about potential cost increases. Will there be any added expenses to the work before completion? This should be noted as soon as it is clear that costs will exceed the agreement estimates. There is a selection box in this field that says yes or no. It should be blank if that's not known or for certain. Supplemental amount anticipated. This is where you capture potential supplemental amounts from additional work that is anticipated, entering the estimate amount of the supplement before the agreement amount is increased. Once a change request has been approved and the agreement amount has been increased, this bill should be returned to $0 to avoid double counting. This action is done manually. Anticipated open balance. This field is auto-calculated by the system by adding the total approved funding to the supplemental amount anticipated minus the billing amount to give us the anticipated open balance. New features. When WBS is entered into the pre-agreement, UAMS will now automatically put the county, division, sub-TIP, and FA project number into the agreement. Certain fields now require change requests to edit to help standardize how updates are made. $0 change requests can be approved directly by the utility coordinator without going through the entire approval workflow. And the last item that I will be covering with you are what's to come with UAMS. New steps. When WBS is, when EDS team is now developed reports that will use this information on UAMS to provide project-specific relocation costs and schedule information. Encroachment agreements will now be included in UAMS to better cover relocated utilities and offer more information of the relocation schedule and more accuracy to those locations. Utilities unit will be working to provide guidance to reconcile encroachment activity, archiving via the permits portal and UAMS. We'll also be having discussions about the possibility of the utility owners submitting their invoices directly, about the possibility of utility owners submitting their invoices directly into UAMS through an invoicing process that the EDS team has developed. But this is still just an idea that we are thinking about right now. If this was to go into production, UAMS would automatically notify the person who created the utility agreement of the invoice submitted and shorten the notification process. One thing that we're going to add eventually, the agreements, the actual UC agreements will wind up being part of the UAMS also through the agreement people. LPMO was talked about that earlier today, so that's a new thing that we're going to probably see in the next 3 to 4 months. Utilities unit is always looking for solutions to improve upon the process of the agreements between NCDOT and utility owners, and making the process of honoring our commitments with those utility owners run so much smoother and more efficiently. We always welcome your suggestions and new ideas to help us reach these goals. Thank you so much for your time today. I will now pass this on to our next presenter, Amy York, to talk about our utilities IPD.
Good afternoon. That was pretty good considering everybody was eating Howlin' Cow ice cream. So I know y'all are maybe getting a little tired, but thanks everybody for joining us this afternoon. And I'm Amy York. I'm the Central Region Utilities Manager, and I am going to talk today about integrated project delivery. I'm sure y'all are familiar with it. If you're not, you'll be getting familiar with it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we've been working on for our utilities IPD over the last year. So Byron mentioned earlier that it's very important for utility relocations and project delivery. I think we all agree with that. And over the past year, we've been working with senior leadership, divisions, getting feedback from them on utility challenges that they've been encountering and what they'd like to see addressed. So I'm going to talk about some of our current efforts that we're working on for our utilities IPD. And I'm going to go, some of these, are going to have more information on them than others, so we're going to just go through each one of them. So our first effort is improving invoice processes, which Michael just talked a little bit about our UAMS system, and that's what we utilize to input invoices. So we're going to try to kind of standardize our invoicing. I know a lot of our PEFs have a standard invoicing way they submit invoices, and that's great. But a lot of our utility companies do not. So we are going to try to standardize that, make a checklist, maybe have them make sure they're sending in everything that needs to be in there, because we don't want to hold up paying anyone. I mean, we really don't. We want to pay our PEFs, we want to pay our utility companies. So maybe if we do that and streamline the process, we won't have delays on sending them back for more information. And our next improvement that I think maybe a lot of the project managers will be interested in hearing about is we are trying to update our cost estimates and improving our cost estimates to make them more accurate and thorough. Just making sure it was on that. Oh, it didn't go. Sorry about that, everybody. There we go. Okay. Because we have struggled with that, and we interviewed a lot of states, South Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, Florida, and they all are struggling with that too, so we're definitely not alone. And that kind of feels good, but it doesn't, so we're hoping to make our estimating a lot better. It's important, and we know that it is. It just can kind of be sort of difficult, especially at the early stages of the project, to get really good estimates. So we have a cookbook. It's called the Utilities Cookbook. Some of the firms have worked on it, and actually it's a pretty good tool. Like most of the states we talked to were like, you got a pretty good tool to work with, but we're going to try to make it better. So KCI, and I know D-Wayne's in here. There's D-Wayne. KCI is helping us in this effort, and we really appreciate all their help with trying to improve our estimating system that we hope will be beneficial for everybody, and especially the project managers trying to do cost projections and budgets. So, and then, all right, training. Training is super important, so that's a topic that comes up a lot. And we've gotten feedback from the divisions on processes that they would like to see some more training on, and we've started those discussions on what that training would look like, and we welcome feedback from our project managers, our consultant partners. If there's some training that you would like to see. So we would always like to educate everybody on utilities, so you're welcome to give us maybe a little training wish list. So one important topic, there we go. One important topic is the divisions have their own division utility personnel. So most divisions have a utility coordinator and possibly a utility engineer. And so we're just going to try to do some training on the roles and responsibilities that may vary from division to division. And that holds true on centrally managed projects. It just kind of varies. We want to sort of bridge that gap and develop some strategies on clarifying those roles. And so that starts kind of early on in the project. We want to make sure that they know what we would be helping, support them to do, or that we don't need to help them with, so we just don't have a gap in coverage. We just want to make sure we're covering these projects from beginning to end, even through utility relocations. And we also need to establish more training on the PDN. I myself need more training on the PDN and the utilities PDN portion myself. Scopes of work. We get some questions about the scopes of work, and do you have a scope of work? And we definitely could use more training on our UAMS that Michael Bright spoke to, and our encroachment agreement portal. And we're also in the early stages of a utility kind of coordination guide or manual that we are going to start working on, and so we hope that we can do that and then engage our consultant partners on additional training that they may need to achieve project delivery. So a big initiative, not this size, but a big initiative for 2022 is utility owner engagement. And this is huge for us, and it's a big deal, and I'm really excited about it. But it's to survey utilities and meet with utility owners, especially the big utility owners that we deal with a lot on projects, and just see if we can talk about challenges, our challenges, their challenges, how we can better partner together, because we need their buy-in early on. I mean, it's so key that they have early buy-in on these projects. And our first company is going to be Duke Energy, because they're pretty much all over the state, you know, you've had Progress Energy and then you had Duke, and then when they merged together, there's some differences, you know, with those two different sections even. So, and we've been gotten assistance from the chief's office that we appreciate to help with these high-level conversations with Duke. And really, we just want them to know that we take their partnership seriously, that we want to work with them help us. So we really want to try to engage those utility companies, because we work with a lot of utility companies, and there's like new ones every day. So it is important, so that partnership. All right, so some efforts that we kind of thought would have a lot of project delivery implications or project manager implications were improving our utility estimates. You know, we hope that will help with cost projections, budgeting. You know, we do get asked a lot about utility cost and supplying that information, so we want to do the best job we can with that. I think clarifying the utility personnel roles and responsibilities, just making sure that the project's covered. You know, just no matter who's doing it, just making sure we're supporting the vision, we're supporting the consultants, supporting the project managers to ensure the projects are covered, you know, from beginning to end. Because utilities may start, but you just don't want to like think, oh, well, they're moving, you know, we don't need to check on them. Because you do. You need to make sure that they're staying on schedules and that they're moving, or if they've got issues that we're getting those worked out. So we really want to engage and make sure these roles and responsibilities are looked at, and it needs to be done early, and it may be different from division to division, and that's okay. It may be different from project to project, and that's also okay. And we do hope that the utility engagement plan that we're excited about will be a win-win for everybody. So, and then the last thing is about the utilities highway contract. So this, putting utility work in the highway contract, this has been a topic that's come up from project managers, senior leadership, the highway contract partners with the AGC, and we've talked with other teams and other DOTs that do put other work in the highway contract, not just water, sewer, and maybe gas occasionally, but the power, telecom, other dry utilities. And as part of that engagement, utility engagement, we're just going to try to see if there's any appetite for that, and we hope that there will be. And you know, if we put more in the contract, you know, hopefully we'd have a bit more control over the relocation schedules. And other states have seen that, and they've given us several options to consider. So we'll kind of see how that goes, but ultimately we just need the utilities' feedback on it, and see how they feel about it. So I don't think I had another slide, but yeah. So to sum up some of our high-level items that we've been working on, those were all of them, but we definitely got more coming. So that's just kind of a peek into 2022. But we do look forward to our continuing partnership with all the DOT disciplines, our divisions, our consultant partners, which I see lots of those in the room, and we want to make 2022 a great year for DOT and project delivery. So we appreciate you attending this last session of the day, but again, like Brian said, save the best for last. But no, we do appreciate it. And next is Bo, and I'll give it to Bo. Let me not forget my mask and my earring that came off. No, you don't need that thing. Okay, no, you're good.
Seems like you monitor my time a little bit. I'm going to breeze through these slides, try to keep everything on schedule, get it out, and we'll get an opportunity at the end, I suppose, to ask a question. So what I'm talking about are utilities things to consider, or how utilities deliverables are different from other deliverables. Why are utilities weird? Utilities deliverables are different. Why? Someone else owns the final product. Utilities have their own scheduling issues to contend with. There are other reasons you're going to encounter these issues anytime you're doing plans, special provisions, estimates, or making late stage project changes dealing with utilities. So let's start with utilities construction special provisions. The goal of the special provisions is to give the utility the final product they expect while maintaining contractual control and using DOT methods. So it's important that we maintain control of the contract and the contractor. So what do I mean by this? We won't use pay items that we're used to. We want to have, there's a contractual relationship between the department and the contractor. We don't want anybody else in that relationship. So we want to maintain complete control over the contract. The utility is going to want to use their own specifications. They're comfortable with them, makes sense. We can't do that. The reason is their specs have contractual language. Their specs are often pretty broad. They contain things that we cover in the general sections and special provisions that we don't want overruled. They may give the utility control over the contractor. I've seen special provisions that gave the, specs that gave the county manager the right to stop the project. If we put it in the contract, I don't know. There's other potential problems like liquidated damages that could cause loss of federal funds. So there are things we don't want in their language, in our language. So don't let them incorporate their specs by reference. Instead, incorporate their requirements that are different into the special provisions. The provision writer's guide will explain how to do this. That's available from contracts and standards under the specifications section. Our specs are pretty good, pretty generic. There's very few actual differences usually. It's okay to reference specs from standards organizations though. Maybe I should get a slide I'm talking about. Give you a second to do that. So UC plans. The purpose of UC plans is to provide a utility design. So we want the utility design. DOT has a standard specifications book that's about that big. We've thought about everything else. We've thought about how to repair driveways, how to replace mailboxes, how to receive. We have our own ways of doing that and reasons for doing it that way. So we want the utilities plans limited to constructing the utilities. So they don't need to provide a lot of that other boilerplate kind of things they would do if they were preparing their own contract. It's okay to use utility provided details. Look at the notes carefully. Make sure that they're not weakening our compaction standards. The UAM requires 200 PSI pipe for pressure pipe. Make sure they're not weakening that standard. Check out their details of how they treat drainage files, especially crossings. We may want to make some suggestions about how we want our pipes treated on our contract. Make sure the description of materials they use isn't different from our specs, or else pay items may get kind of confused. Now, proprietary products. This is a problem for all disciplines, not just utilities, but of course for us it's a little bit different because this puts our consultants that we've hired and chosen in the middle and at risk if they're proprietary products. The utility companies, they want you to use their specs, even if they're public, even if they're a public organization, a city or town, they are often forcing their specs to be used by developers who aren't subject to GS 133, so it doesn't make a lot of difference to them. They're the ones making decisions, not the ones paying the penalty. So if you check out GS 133.4, that places the penalty on the engineer that seals the plans and special provisions, and that penalty is a $500 fine and a year of loss of your license. We are trying, Contracts and Standards is trying to revise that law, but that's not by no means certain. But what the law says is that we have to provide competition we should have a general spec, a generic spec, and if you can't have a generic spec, you should try to name 3 brands, and 2 brands, and if it's totally impossible, 1 brand that you better justify. Okay, pay items in the spec. You want to make sure that we use standard pay items wherever possible on the plans. Why? Because of future estimates, we build a database. Contractor expects consistency, the resident engineer appreciates consistency. And the AGC is out of hand in developing some of our pay items. So they expect to see those pay items used because they care about them. If you have non-standard pay items, you need a special provision. Name these items in ways that make sense for future reference in the bid averages. So in other words, make that name descriptive. Quantity estimates. A little bit different from utilities because there are split costs. So there's non-participating costs. This is because of GS 13327.1 that splits participation between DOT and the municipality, or it may be because there's betterment. So you'll need to create a in-part category to enter those utility share quantities. The consultant or the PM can do that. If there's size betterment, the quantities may depend on the price, and we can help you with that in utility. It's a pretty simple calculation, and we understand the logic behind it. The consultant will enter the quantities for DOT and utilities in Victor. Don't forget, also got to estimate foundation conditioning material, geotextile, pavement repair. These are not utilities items, but they're in the utilities estimate. Multiple utilities. If you have multiple utilities, that presents its own special problems. You might need more than one in-part category. If there's more than one design firm working for multiple utilities, somebody needs to coordinate the plans. So I scope on the firms to do this. Whoever is our design firm, they get to coordinate the plans. We're hoping to develop some guidance about what the plans should look like. We're learning the hard way right now ourselves how to do this because typically when this happened before, we were designing it. So consistency is important, and if you've got 2 owners, you may need special pay items because they may be a little different. UBO plans. UBO plans are unsealed. Their intention is to give the bidders information about the state of our coordination efforts. So we want to give them only the information they need. So reduce the amount of information in our on-net plans. If there's anything a little wonky, it will get you questions, and that will take a lot of your time. So represent the relocations, don't provide offsets, don't provide depth, keep it very minimal, alignment, abandonments, only the UBO. The UCs are already somewhere else in the plan, taking a look at those. There's 3 things. Ben Kennedy says there's 3 things the contractor wants to know. Are you out of my way? When will you be out of my way if you aren't out of my way? Do I have to do anything to get you out of my way? And what's your contact info in case we miss something? So that's what we want on the UBO plans and special provisions. Just a note, make sure that the location on the UBO plans matches the agreements. The agreements are the legal document that allows the contractor for the utilities to build. That's where they will build. Make sure that those plans are constructible, or you'll have other issues that you'll have to deal with. UBO special provisions. I know these are difficult to prepare. We don't control right-of-way schedules. We don't control utility schedules. But what we need you to do is get realistic dates. So get from right-of-way what their expected date is. Take it, use it, trust it. If it's wrong, okay, it's wrong. Then make your projections based on that. The bidder needs that information. Contract time needs that information. Don't pad it. If you pad it, you get a higher price. If you might not get a claim, you will get a higher price. Don't use any weasel words. Be certain in what in your projections. Don't say it's to be determined. Don't say it's expected to be. Say it will be relocated by. And go with that. Contractor really wants your certainty. So what's different about utility schedules? Well, if you're going to have plan changes, involve the coordinator from the concept forward. If you involve the coordinator after you have a really good set of plans, you've added a month to your development plan. Utilities have their own scheduling challenges. If you have an event that delays your work by a week, they may lose their contractor, and it might delay their work 2 months. So be aware of the special challenges that they're going to have. And so next up, Larry Sanders will be talking about encroachments in both areas.
Thank you, Bo. It's a pleasure to be here with you guys today. I'm Larry Sanders. I'm the state encroachments engineer, and so I deal with all 14 divisions, and I support 38 district offices around the state. Most of you guys know what encroachments are, but the purpose of encroachments is the legal means to allow installations in our right-of-way, whether that's by a utility company or a non-utility company, or a non-utility installation. Non-utilities might include pavement widening, curb and gutter, sidewalk, privately maintained bridges over our roads, awnings overhanging the right-of-way, groundwater monitoring wells, piping of treated effluent, and that's the non-utility side. Utilities, which is our general topic today, includes power, water, sewer, gas, telecommunications, petroleum. We do have a lot of things that are in our right-of-way throughout the state. And among the 10,000 annually submitted encroachments to the district offices, that's where they first get routed. Roughly 96% of those are handled at the district office level. So what happens to the other 4%? The other 4%, by policy, some of them have to come to Raleigh because of design considerations of what's being done with either water, power, sewer, or it's located in a controlled access right-of-way. Those are the things that come to my office. Well, our 1993 policy manual that Byron mentioned earlier, that had a process in it, and the way the DOT was set up years ago, all the central design functions happen in Raleigh. So the division design personnel and that process didn't exist. So the way the manual was written was, when an encroachment came in, it involved a project, it sent it to Raleigh. And that's what happened before. Well, you guys, as you know, that process has changed, and so our Utilities Combination Manual has tried to address that. And what we're trying to do, particularly my presentation today, is talk about those encroachments that happen to be involved within the limits of a project. Because the utility comes along, they don't necessarily know where we have projects. They just know they want to expand their system, particularly telecommunications. But power companies in the process of upgrading their system statewide as well to create more resiliency. So there was a switch in the process, and instead of it coming to Raleigh, we are now asking for the district offices to transfer those encroachments that happen to be involved in projects to division project personnel, for them to have a first crack at it, and to determine if it's a division managed project, then it would stay in the division. So either the division project personnel would handle that encroachment for the process that it goes through on that side, or if they determined that the project was too far out, we didn't have plans on it, they would give it back to the district engineer. And the district would say, okay, we're going to approve it, but we're going to put a provision in here saying we got this project coming in the future, so you may have to be relocated at your own cost, depending on the nature of the project. So that brings me to the encroachment forms. 13 encroachment forms exist for various cases of installations in the right-of-way. Customers of NCDOT use these forms for site-specific installations. of various cases in basically two different categories. One's by non-utilities, and there are 4 forms for that. And then there's for by utilities, and we have 8 forms for that. I'm not going to go into the details of those forms, but I do want you to pay attention that 2 of the forms, namely it's called the 16.1 form for utilities on secondary primary highways, or the controlled access highways. This is the 16.2 form. The reason why I bring your attention to these forms is because these forms, and you'll see this in the Utilities Accommodation Manual, the same forms are used for new installations in a right-of-way by an encroaching party is also used on our projects. So you can see how these forms can create some disparity or some confusion over what form should be used. That's an issue we may want to talk about in the future of updating and creating a new form. That's not where we're at the point right now. The point is that we have the 2 forms that are used on projects. The initial development of the encroachment permitting site was, the intended audience was our district offices. And with that being the case, there was no concept at the time it was initially developed that, hey, we needed to consider what was going on in our projects. It was, things got routed to the district office, and then it got approved to the district office. Well, as the encroachment portal, it was developed in 2017, and we have over 10,000 encroachments processed annually in the state. And with that volume coming through, there has to be a separate process to deal with the projects. And so, as time has progressed, some of our division personnel and some of our district offices, some of our field offices have decided to start using what was intended for our district offices to provide approvals. Well, some of our project personnel have also gotten involved in the same process of doing the same thing. Well, that works good in some ways, but when the projects are implicated, there's a different process. So some of the customers have submitted revisions to the encroachment portal, and that's some of the process that it was designed for. So the utility company would come to the DOT, submit an encroachment, and then we would turn back around and say, no, you need to change your plans. Well, that wasn't working okay. That's been a typical encroachment process. So we would ask for revisions. It would come back to the DOT, the back and forth process until the DOT says, okay, we're good with that. We'll sign off on it, and that's how the permit got approved. So that process was not intended to correspond to the project process. So other customers of the DOT have come and submitted revisions. That's been a mistake on their part. To, instead of using the original submittal to process that revision in the encroachment processing world, we've asked them to not do that. And similarly, some utility contractors and some companies have submitted encroachments using the 16.1 and the 16.2 forms for our projects and submitted it through the same portal. And so that was an unintended use of the development of this process. I'm not here to say that it's wrong. I'm going to say that was unintended. So it wasn't set up to handle all the requests that come that way. Some of our division personnel have actually liked that process and have started using it for that purpose. So we're not here in a place to say, no, don't use that, our permitting system for that process, but there are limitations in using that purpose. The encroachment site is governed by user type and the respective access to that site. So the customers are utility companies, design firms, and so that's one type. And the other type is a DOT personnel or a consultant that is working on behalf of DOT to approve these types of agreements and permits. So you can get access to our site. There's a link here for that. And then also there's a link to our general utilities pages to get user access. So if you don't have access to our user site, you need to get access to it. There's a way to do that here. And that request comes to my office, and we work with the IT department to get your user access to that. So I know that some divisions haven't gotten that yet, and that's fine. And so different divisions are operating in different ways in terms of processing these non-reimbursable encouragements on projects. So we're here to help and support the process, and if there's any way that we can help improve the process by using this portal or making some changes to it, that's what we want to help do. So we're here to help you. I think that's all I've got.
So that is our presentation. Our contact information is up on the screen. I'll ask for another round of applause for the managers, Larry and Amy and Michael and Bo, for their presentation. I watched Heather and others carry an hour by themselves. Very impressive. I don't know that I'm built for it, so I recruited my people to help me out. So I appreciate y'all. Now we will open it up for questions, if anybody has questions. This is the other benefit of being the last one. Oh, Keith, here. What's up, Keith?
So there may be some rare occasions where utilities will hold up the project.
Occasion. Yeah.
Has there been any discussion or, there are some state DOTs or highway agencies who have, through language and statutes where they're permitting, they have the ability to incentivize utilities to stay on track and to be a partner in the program. Does NCDOT consider something like that, or moving in those lines, or is that just too far from being able to happen?
The answer to both of those, well, I'll put it like this. We have researched what other states do. There are, Tennessee, for example, will pay encroaching utilities to put their work in a highway contract. Georgia and Florida have fairly robust language, statutory language, that puts, pretty staunch restrictions on utilities and responsiveness and that sort of thing. Georgia has an entire arbitration process that they go through with utilities when they are when they're creating issues with the project. We are investigating what options are at our disposal. I think the biggest challenge that we're finding is that it comes down to statutory language and what the general statutes say for states. In a lot of these states, you'll find that the things that they're doing that are successful for them have been in place for, in some cases, decades. And so getting those sorts of statutory changes in North Carolina can be challenging. The utilities have a very robust lobby when it comes to legislation and that sort of thing. But I can say that we have had conversations with senior leadership. There's certainly an appetite within the department to investigate all options. I don't think that anything is explicitly off the table right now when it comes to what we can do to, for lack of a better way to put it, put more teeth into whether it's our agreements or our schedules or that sort of thing. And that may be some sort of, that may be incentivizing utilities in that way. That may be trying to incorporate, Florida does a really good job of incorporating a utility relocation schedule into the utility relocation agreement. So they've got, in addition to their URA, they've got a relocation schedule that is signed by the utility, it's signed by the DOT, and they're basically saying, okay, this is what we're agreeing to when it comes to utility relocation. And if DOT says, makes a design change that then impacts that schedule, they have language in that schedule that allows them to revisit and kind of renegotiate that schedule. So there's some things in place, but again, even with that utility schedule in Florida, that is, there's statute language, state statute language that kind of requires some of this stuff. So, really, it's the difference between policies and laws, right? And when it's in the statute, it's a lot less arguable for, our utility partners than it is if it's just a policy or a best practice. One other thing I'd like to mention is that you mentioned, incentivizing utilities. North Carolina, this is my favorite North Carolina stat. North Carolina DOT maintains the second largest amount of lane miles of state maintained right-of-way than any other state in the country. It's second to Texas in lane miles of state maintained road. And so anytime you start talking about spending money that we are not spending right now, even if other states are doing it, it scales up exponentially when you start talking about just the sheer amount of utilities we encounter, because we are a state department that maintains I-40, but we also maintain the road that your house is on. And so in, say, a Georgia or a Florida, they're county roads. The state DOT is only maintaining the interstates, U.S. routes, and state routes. And so that's a nuance to that conversation when you start talking about additional expenditures for utility relocation and that sort of thing. It scales up very quickly. And so that's the nuanced part of that conversation. But again, and I appreciate a lot of the interest that our chief's office and the senior leadership of DOT has had in not taking options off the table to try to solve these problems and looking at really kind of vetting in earnest what other states are doing. But that's a very good question.
Great response. Thanks, Brian.
Anybody else got any questions? Not one question.
Sorry, I've got one, but that broadband coordinator position is going to be in central office, and is it going to work mainly in the pre-construction realm, or is it working like earlier into planning and before construction?
That is TBD. That is to be determined. One thing that we're finding in talking with a lot of states, so FHWA published this broadband rule last month. It goes into effect in March. They did a webinar with all the state DOTs maybe about 2 weeks ago. It was this month to kind of go over it. And all the state DOTs are kind of like, what do we do? What does this mean? There are certain states, Utah, Minnesota, that have very robust plans when it comes to this. There are other states that are just like, we're just trying to check the boxes and make sure that we've got everything in place. We've got some ideas about what this is. The one thing I can guarantee is that it'll grow and change. I think right now the expectation is that the broadband coordinator would be in the central office, likely in the utilities unit. But what we see it as right now, or what I see it as right now, is kind of the center of this wheel of all things broadband, because we've got broadband companies approaching Larry saying, we want to put stuff in your right-of-way. We've got broadband companies approaching the chief's office saying, we've got these massive build-out plans for your state. We've got all of these little broadband pieces that are coming in a variety of doors at the department. And right now we just need one person that can kind of be the tie that binds those things together. Over time, I suspect that, especially with the interest that so many folks have in being in North Carolina, and kind of coming to our state, which is a good thing, right? Jobs, industry, that sort of thing. That's going to grow and change and kind of morph. And broadband is really a challenge for us as a state department, because we do a really good job building roads and bridges. But we move at a pace that is not quite the pace of broadband in the telecom industry. They are sprinting all the time. And so those are some conversations that are going to change over time. But generally, we suspect that it'll start in the central office as kind of this piece and probably grow from there. That's a very good question. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
The manual update, if we have suggestions on an update, even if it was said earlier, but who do we send that suggestion to?
NCDOT utilities at ncdot.gov. And I did not put that up there. Where you should not send it is bsanders at ncdot.gov. I wouldn't recommend it. I wouldn't recommend it. But we do have a service email for the unit, and I apologize for not having that as part of the list of contact information. But we also have on our Connect site on the utilities page on connect.ncdot.gov. We've got a stay connected, utilities connected, it's a pun. A stay connected with DOT. And to be fair, if there are any Hydro people around, we stole that from Hydro. Hydro, theirs is like in the flow.
Ours is stay in the flow.
Stay in the flow. So we said stay connected, we just cribbed it. They're like our cousins, okay? So you can sign up there for stuff that we push out, notifications and that sort of thing. And that's from the utilities unit page on connect.ncdot.gov. But if you want to send us any kind of general thing that's not coming to a specific person, ncdotutilities@ncdot.gov. I don't know if I said this before, but do not send it to B. Sanders. Maybe Bo Hemphill at ncdot.gov or LD Sanders1 at ncdot.gov. Any other questions? Y'all have been great. All right, we're done. Enjoy your day.